We got Star Wars Skeleton Crew Episode 6 review. Check it out. That was pretty cool.
Welcome back, everyone. Happy New Year. This will be my full Star Wars Skeleton Crew Episode 6 video. Did not think we'd be getting a new episode on New Year's Eve, but thankfully they did drop it. There's a bunch of Easter eggs and references,
How
so
many
we'll break it all
episodes is
down.
it, like
Remember,
8
there's
left?
only 2
Well,
episodes left, so be
8
sure to
total, I mean.
subscribe to get
2
everything.
left.
When we get a little closer to the actual finale, I'll talk about what's happening with the future of Star Wars, because like the next big Star Wars series after this will get episodes 4 this year. Technically, as you're watching this video, it is technically 2025. So later this year, we will be getting the Star Wars Andor episodes, which sound like they're going to be peak. But this week's episode was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, who you probably remember has directed pretty much all the Mandoverse shows so far. She's done episodes of The Mandalorian, she's done episodes of Ahsoka, and now she's done an episode of this. And if it wasn't clear, because we haven't had any like real big crossovers like Book of Boba Fett style, where like Mando and Grogu like literally take over an episode with Luke Skywalker and Ahsoka. Skeleton Crew is meant to be connected to the Mandoverse. It takes place during the same part of the timeline, but because of the whole plot with At-Aten being hidden from the rest of the galaxy, the whole Jewels of the Old Republic storyline, the whole treasure of At-Aten, it makes sense that like Mando, Grogu,
away
Luke
from
Skywalker, anybody else from like the Mandoverse doesn't know that At-Aten exists. That'll probably change eventually. Like, they'll find some way of connecting this with the Mandoverse of shows. And maybe some of these characters, like Jude Law, probably might show up in the Mando movies. With the way things are looking at Lucasfilm and the way they're plotting the future of the movies out, it doesn't seem like he's going to be in the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, because that's meant to be like them dipping their toes back in theatrical releases. And originally, it was just meant to be The Mandalorian Season 4, and Jon Favreau turned his scripts for that into a 2+ hour movie. And I don't think that Jude Law was meant to be in The Mandalorian Season 4 to begin with. But we'll probably get some more clues about that as we get closer to the finale of Skeleton Crew.
The Mandalorian at the movie is going to be crazy.
The actual episode title was Zero Friends Again, a reference to KB in the episode when she explains her backstory.
That was kind of crazy.
The cybernetic implants, having 0 friends until Fern came along. Like nobody wanted to be her friend after she got into her accident. Worried in the episode that might happen to her again, like she'll lose all of her friends. But it being a huge opportunity for Wim to have a big bonding experience with her and make friends with her in a way that he hadn't before. Like, they hadn't really had a lot of scenes together with just the two of them.
We gonna be
Overall,
friends.
it felt like a really brisk episode, but I think that's because it wasn't super Easter egg heavy or like super lore heavy like last week's episode. The actual opening scene with the kids flying down the chute from the trapdoor is meant to be a Goonies reference, with like all the kids flying down through One-Eyed Willie's treasure room. Only instead of being dumped in water, they get dumped out the back of the mountain. There are also a bunch of chutes here too, so like you have to imagine there are probably trapdoors all over his compound. If it wasn't clear though, the tubes themselves are like waste disposal tubes.
Had a lot of ways to get out.
Are just connected to, like,
if he
all
was
these
under
tubes
attack,
aren't just there for the purposes
probably
of being
wouldn't be, though.
trapdoors. They pay off the whole bit with KB being worried about going into the steam tunnels because her cybernetic implants were going to short out. We find out what happens when that goes down. Because her implants are so connected to her higher brain functions, the more that they malfunction, the more she just literally shuts down, like her body literally shuts down.
That's crazy, bro.
So basically they have to find a way to reset her, to repair her like you would a droid. Fern also says that this happens sometimes, presumably when they're playing rough or when they fall off their speeder bike. They also explain this later when KB starts talking about how she can't keep up the same way. Like, she still has physical disabilities, even though her mental functions are enhanced by all the cybernetic implants. In a big part of her life, as she got to know Fern, became friends with her, like Fern became her only friend, she started to go with her and do all these things that she was worried about doing, knowing that it would actually hurt her implants, but still doing them because she was worried that she would lose her only friend. So when Fern says that her implants break down like this every once in a while all the time, it's probably because they're doing stuff like that. You have to imagine them riding around on the speeder bike through traffic like this all the time. Like, of course, they're gonna probably get in a couple accidents every once in a while. Then they have probably some of the funniest cut-tos in the episode, just throughout the entire episode in general. Like, it was a very funny episode.
They were waiting for him.
Jude Law exits the landing platform, laughing maniacally, covered in treasure. Like, huge victory for him as he sees the staff waiting for him to pop out. Like, what the hell's going on here?
They were being held hostage,
sashays over to them and asks for checkout, like he's meant for this to happen. Just as the pirates show up, revealing that Space Urkel is alive, as is Pocket, and it seems like his acid only took out a couple of them. Silvo makes a gag about Space Urkel's one working eye, probably the wrong move. We don't see Pocket later in the episode, so she might have actually like left the series at this point. Like, she takes her bounty from Brutus and then probably takes off. And even though he's covered head to toe in treasure, they're very careful that the camera picks up that one of the pirates is taking his lightsaber off of him. I know
He's
there's been
gonna
a lot
get
of
that
questions
back.
about this lightsaber too. Where did it come from? What era of the Star Wars timeline is it from? Just because so much of the series is harking on Old Republic, like older than High Republic, I'm also assuming
It's
that the
probably a
lightsaber
little
is
weak
also
Jedi.
from the Old Republic era. So at least right now, without more evidence, without the Star Wars people like literally coming from behind the scenes and saying, no, this is who it belongs to, I think it's meant to belong to somebody new that we don't know, like not a canon character from previous Star Wars stuff. But I think them taking the lightsaber off of him is meant to remind you of last week's episode when the hotel did the exact same thing with the knife and he just force yanked it back. We will probably see
He's
him
gonna
do
do the
something
same
similar
thing.
in either next week's episode or the finale. Like he will yoink the lightsaber back and probably use it to slice up a whole bunch of people. Also love the follow-up joke to this too, with SN33 poking his head out, also covered in treasure, but is
Oh, he's
instantly
dripping
taken
in
out by
that
their
gold.
blaster. And even though it wasn't clear later in the episode, the pirates would have taken SN33 with them because that's how Jude Law knows how to get to At-Atten, because the coordinates are stored in SN33's memory. You remember that the kids didn't have SN33 with them on the ship when they got back on the ship. Just as they're about to take him back to Brutus, the New Republic X-Wings from a couple episodes ago show up again. These are meant to be the same ones that we saw in Kim's Mood. Like, that's why the little kids go crazy. Like, hey, those are the same X-Wings. They shoot down one of the pirate ships, with the kids also realizing that the X-Wings are actually the good guys, even though they don't really know about the concept of the New Republic. But it's meant to
They
pay
know
off the
who's
idea
good and
that
who's
Jude Law
bad,
lied
though.
to them, telling them that they were the bad guys to get them to help him escape. They set up the whole drama with Fern and KB to give the group an excuse to split off so that you can have those different scenes with the two of the groups together. The way that she explains it later, though, the whole reason why KB got upset with Fern is because she was worried that her cybernetic implants would completely shut down mid-climb up the mountain and she would actually fall
Dude,
and
it
die.
fell right back
When she
down,
says, I
bro.
can't do all the things that you can do, like on a physical level, they also try to use the Neil storyline too. Like, poor little Neil with his stubby little elephant legs can't quite keep up. Basically the same situation for him. Then the episode is calling all these little creatures trash crabs that actually speak, like they were literally speaking the word follow, 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 kind of like a parakeet can speak. And the way they make it seem is they're just organic crabs that are using the trash as their shells, and they're meant to be the children of this massive, massive trash crab.
They almost
They
got
split the group
cooked.
with KB and Wim going off with the trash crabs, and Fern and Neil trying to climb the mountain. Also kind of felt like Neil went with Fern just because he wanted to be a good friend. Like, he definitely did not want to climb the mountain, but he's like, I don't
Yeah,
want
he
to
was
leave
like,
Fern
I
by
want to
herself, so
go
I'll
the
go too.
safe route.
Good old Neil, probably one of the best friends of any of the group to anybody else.
Yep.
Back at the pirate base, Brutus holds that trial for Silva that he was gonna have before Silva escaped, pronouncing him guilty, sentencing him to death. But then because they invoked the pirate code, which is like a big thing on the series, like they're making a big deal about the rules of the pirate code. That was the whole way that Jude Law gained captainship of the Onyx Cinder from Vern. He uses that to basically spare his life temporarily enough so that he can actually buy more time by baiting them with the idea of the treasure of At-Atten, hoping that that will save his life. Like, I will give you so much more treasure than you'll ever be able to spend in your entire life if you do not shoot me at the airlock. He sings the pirate's song about Tac Renaud, and the song is basically about his final days and looking for At-Atten. Like, the song itself mentions At-Atten. That winds up being successful, so now the pirates, with Jude Law, are going to At-Atten, probably going to arrive around the same time that the kids also arrive there. Sort of giving you an idea for what the stakes are going to be in the last two episodes.
But I wonder
The
how
other
it's
thing
gonna
too that I'm
go,
expecting,
because
because they made such a
the
big
people
deal
there
about the
aren't gonna
pirates
be able
code
to
throughout
fight.
many different episodes this
They
season
don't know
so far,
nothing
is that
about
there'll
no
be some
bad.
twists with the pirate code in the finale too. Either a funny twist or like a big WTF kind of twist. Maybe Fern will also challenge Jude Law per the pirate code and become the captain of the ship again. The whole scene of them bonding while fixing KB's visor was amazing. Like, great scenes between all the kids
Yeah, it was
this
pretty
episode.
good.
Her visor completely shorts out, and basically Wim has to fix it
This
with
series
her
got
help,
potential.
obviously, because he has no idea what he's doing. But they use it to both bring them closer together, like they're much better friends by the end of this, and they also use it as an opportunity to tell you more about KB's backstory and what her deal with the implants is. Like, she got into an accident when she was younger and got them as prosthetics, essentially. But the way they make it seem is that she had some sort of brain injury, so it's more of a mental prosthetic. Her mental capacity, her ability to memorize, recall things is greatly enhanced, but the way she explains it, she still has severe physical limitations, like there is a disability there. She also explains that she needs regular maintenance on the parts, like the prosthetics, otherwise they will start to get buggy and her body will start to shut
Yeah,
down.
she can't start
Then the way
doing
they
too
play this off,
much.
he's sort of like her knight in shining armor, her Jedi knight in shining armor. She compliments him too at the end of this, like, thank you, Jedi Knight. And you can just see him get so proud, like he grows 10 feet tall. He's going to be living off that compliment for the rest of this year. But the whole scene is
Right.
meant to basically bring them closer together, like bring the group closer together, even though it's just the two of them. Then
It
they have the
helped
funny
though.
reveal with the trash crabs and Wim being pissed off at himself for never being able to tell who's bad and who's good. The giant trash crab
Right.
seems like
He's
it's the
0 and
queen
2.
of the trash crabs, like the mother of all these smaller ones. And all I could think of was the giant crab from Moana, finding out that they're basically meant to be tonight's dinner. Then on the other team, like I said, poor Neil's stubby little elephant legs aren't doing him any help on the climb up the mountain, but they're able to jump to the ship as it's in the middle of getting junked, which is also paying off the joke from last week's episode when they first showed up at the hotel, and the help made that brief reference about getting waste removal because the ship looked like a piece of junk.
Mm.
Turns out they were just going to throw it in the trash pile. Then this whole trash compactor scene isn't meant to be exactly like the one from A New Hope, but it feels like they were going for some of that energy too, with the kids saving themselves at the last possible second. KB telling Neil to fly the ship is also meant to be a callback to the time Jude Law told him to do it. This is basically like a replay of the scene from a couple episodes ago on Kim's moon. All the different kids taking different positions, flying the ship, proving that they are just as capable operating the ship by themselves.
But
I think this is also meant
ain't
to pay
no
off
way
the
they're gonna
earlier
have little
reference to
kids
something
just
SN33 said when they were
exploring
at
the
the pirate
world.
base, when he asked the kids, why can't kids also be pirates? And turns out, like, this is them proving that kids can also be pirates and fly the ship. Then they finally bring back the whole bit about Chekhov's button that they should never press, like the whole demolition sequencer. But the only thing that I wasn't expecting here is that it's actually
Desperate
Fern to
times
press the
calls for
button, not
desperate
Wim, because
measures.
Wim's whole thing is that he can't not press buttons. And they basically reveal that it just separates the larger ship from the smaller vessel, sort of like a Star Trek
That's
Next
pretty
Generation
cool.
situation where the saucer section could separate from the battle bridge and like the main body of the ship. So now they're just flying the main body of the ship, which actually looks way fresher, way cleaner than the actual original
It
ship.
does.
Meaning that in the future, if it isn't destroyed the next two episodes, this smaller ship could be like their permanent ship that they fly around on, assuming Jude Law doesn't take it at the end of the series. We can get into that when we get closer to the finale because I'm not totally sure exactly how they're going to end the series because the kids are still really young. So it's not like their parents are going to be like, you know what, go ahead and quit school. Like, who needs
Right.
school? Just go off and be pirates for the rest of your lives. They're basically all like
Yeah,
12
but it
years
got
old. So like their
potential
parents are
for
going to let them run
the
off
future when they're
forever.
older.
And Jude Law doesn't feel like he's going to want to stay on the planet forever either. Like he'll stay for like a little while as a guest to them after he probably helps save their lives, but then eventually he'll want to leave. This kind of gets into what they're going to do
Yeah,
with
he'll
like a
probably
season 2 of
turn
the
good.
show if they do a season 2 because when they made the series they weren't planning on doing multiple seasons, but the way that John Watts and the other producers talked about it, now they are actively talking about developing a season 2. That doesn't mean that it's going to happen, it just means they're talking about it, and they would have to do a time jump the way that John Watts explained it, just
Yeah.
because by the time they would get that out, the kids would look like 2 feet taller. That's how fast they're growing. This is like the Stranger Things problem, and the Stranger Things show was actually way better in the earlier seasons when the kids were younger about getting seasons out way faster. You watch them do season 2 of this show, and Neil and Wim come back with 5 o'clock shadows. But the big
Mm.
idea is that episode 7 next week, both the kids and Jude Law with the pirates also probably arriving back on At Aden around the same time,
Maybe like
with the
2
kids
years
having to
do
get the
another
parents'
one.
help to deal
Season
with the
2.
pirates, and at least Jude Law at first too, because he also very much wants the treasure for himself. And even though they made such a big deal about the security droids on the planet being so fearsome, like everybody on the planet is terrified of the security droids, they actually might use that for another joke where the pirates use their weapons to make super quick work, like steamroll the security droids like
Yeah,
it's no
they're
big
gonna get
deal.
cooked, bro.
Wouldn't it feel like the typical joke that this series would go for, where they hype the security droids up so much all season, only for them to be super weak in reality? There's also the twist behind the mysterious supervisor
I
and whether or
mean,
not it's
yeah,
an
we
actual
could get
person who
someone.
exists.
The
Just because there's
supervisor
so
might
many
show
theories
up. Who
about what could be
knows?
going on there, I'm hoping they reveal the answer by the end of episode 7. My early theory for episode 8, the finale, is probably when Jude Law turns the corner and saves the kid from the pirates after things get real bad for them, and winds up ultimately redeeming himself a little bit, but still being a relatively terrible person. You have to imagine he's been on kind of a Han Solo type of arc, but he's been an even bigger dirtbag than Han Solo was when A New Hope came along. But I think his whole arc in this series is that ultimately he will save their lives by the end of the series. Everybody post all your predictions in the comments below. In my full episode 7 video we'll post next week after they release it. This is actually a pretty short video. I wasn't expecting to make something this short, but I think it's the idea there's just not a ton of Easter eggs or references in the background. Usually that's where videos get super long, when you have just like a bunch of explainers for like a bunch of really ancient lore. Like I
Yeah.
said, there's a bunch of big stuff coming up. We should also be getting a new Daredevil Born Again trailer really soon, so I'll try to do videos for everything as
Hopefully
it
they
comes along. Be
make
sure
that
to enable
good,
alerts for my
because
channel so you
Daredevil
don't miss any of that. Everybody click here for that
can't
new
be a
Skeleton
miss,
Crew
bro.
episode. I'll update.
So that'll be it for this video. Please like, comment, subscribe.